Hey, what is going on, guys? It's Lazarus back with another MLB The Show video, and today we're going to be talking about the top 10 legends I really want to see show up for the first time in MLB The Show 21. Now, as far as I know, none of these guys have been in the game since they retired, and having them as new legends would be really nice to see in Diamond Dynasty. And although you can create your own players, it's still just cool to have them in the thing officially. We got guys from all sorts of teams, all sorts of eras of baseball, so this is definitely going to be a fun one, and make sure you stay tuned to see everyone. Without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and get right into it. And at the number 1 spot, we have the Mets captain himself, David Wright, who's a pretty recent retiree. Of course, his career was cut a little bit short by that back injury he ended up suffering from towards the latter part of his career. But throughout his entire baseball career, David Wright was just a really fun, great player to watch. And in a year, I feel like where tides will turn for Mets fans, where better times are upon them, why not also add David Wright into the game so you could satisfy the fans of old and the fans of new? You can't tell the story of the Mets without this guy, so I think it only makes sense to have him in the show 21. And at our number 2 spot, we have Andy Pettitte, former pitcher of most notably the New York Yankees, and also a short stint with the Houston Astros. And if we look at playoff numbers, he's easily one of the better playoff pitchers of all time. I think he has the most postseason wins of any starting pitcher ever, and I know that wins don't mean a whole lot in this day and age, but you gotta admit that's still pretty impressive. Every potential clinching game, they sent this guy out to the mound, and they had a pretty damn good feeling that they were gonna win. And with someone that had such a long career, you could definitely have a good variety of cards for him to use in the game. And even though it doesn't quite look like he's gonna be inducted into the Hall of Fame, I think becoming a legend in MLB The Show would be a nice consolation prize. So why not? Let's get our boy Andy in there. Not to mention he has the nastiest pickoff move of all time. And at number 3, we have one that I think is actually kind of obvious and pretty damn likely, and that's Roberto Clemente, the Hall of Fame Pittsburgh Pirates player. And pretty much the main reason why I think this one's gonna happen for sure is because, get this, MLB The Show 21, he was arguably the most famous number 21 ever, so it's just a match made in heaven, is what I'm saying. On top of being one of the best players ever, he was also a great man, and as you may know, he passed away in a plane crash trying to bring supplies into Puerto Rico, so I feel like they could definitely honor him by making proceeds of any kind of Roberto Clemente addition to the game go to certain charities that he would have supported. And it's a great opportunity to honor a guy who is a fantastic player, a fantastic person, while at the same time making a difference in the community. And now, on a less serious note, at number 4, we have Manny Ramirez, who probably has the all-time record for most swag held by a single player. And honestly, it's not like he's a groundbreaking player or anything, nor am I even sure if he's allowed to be in the game because of all his suspensions with steroids and all that bullshit. But he's another guy who would just be fun to use, and he's been on so many teams and had so many like stages in his career where they could really get creative with the cards they release for him. And I think it's one of those guys where there's no harm, no foul. If he's in there, cool. If not, I don't think anyone's gonna cry about it. And at number 5, we have Prince Fielder, who, if you remember a couple years back, unfortunately had to retire due to a neck injury he suffered. And that's always been like one of my personal what ifs. Like, can you imagine if he stayed healthy, the numbers he probably would have ended up with? Especially if he was playing in Texas, 100% healthy. Bro, he would have been putting up monster numbers, especially in that ballpark. And it just sucks to see that it got cut so short, so quickly, so out of nowhere too. And in his prime with the Brewers, the guy was fantastic. He gave us one of the best home run celebrations of all time. And just generally speaking, it'd be nice to see him back in the game. He's one of those guys I don't think anyone could really hate. And he used to be a personal favorite of mine as a kid, so that's why I want to see him in here. I mean, you really can't go wrong with that sweet ass swing he had too. At number 6, we have another guy whose career had to end pretty early, but due to other reasons, and that's Josh Hamilton, who unfortunately, due to his battle with drugs and addiction, had to hang up the cleats and call it quits. But when Josh Hamilton was in his prime, he was easily one of the most scary players in the game, and I mean in terms of being a pitcher. He's probably the last guy you wanted to come up in a big spot because he was that fucking lethal with the bat. On top of that, even before his time with the Rangers, when he was drafted by the Rays, he was looked at as the next great player before everything got kind of derailed. Power, speed, defense, he had everything. He had all the tools. And it sucks that we never got to see it fully come to fruition. Although he was amazing in his short time with the Rangers, that 5-year span, he was great. It's unfortunately another case of what could have been. And he was another guy I loved to watch when I was young, so I definitely like to see him in the game because despite all his adversities, he still managed to be a great player. At the number 7 spot, we have another guy who I wouldn't call my personal favorite, but I do really like the myths and stories surrounding him, and that's Doc Ellis, most notably of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And if you don't know, Doc Ellis somehow managed to throw a no-hitter while he was under the influence of lysergic acid diethylamide. And if you don't know what that is, can't go too in-depth into it because I don't want YouTube to demonetize me, but just look it up. And the fact that the MLB pretty much scrubbed all footage of this game from the public means it must have been some crazy ass shit that was going on. Literally just that alone makes me want to see more of Doc Ellis. It makes me want to have him in the game, and I know there's probably no way in hell it's ever gonna happen. It would still be pretty damn funny, and they should give him his own like little acid themed card just for because you know what? He's a legend for that in my book. And at number 8, we have Alfonso Soriano, who's another guy who had a very interesting career. I think he's been on one of these lists every single time I make it, just because I like the guy. Another one of those not quite Hall of Famers, but he still had like a really, really good career. He was on a lot of teams. He had a lot of ups and downs. So they could do a lot with him if he was in the game. And just in general, I think he'd be fun to use. The guy would either hit fucking nukes or look like he was completely lost out there. And just generally speaking, I enjoyed watching him on the Yankees. At least on the second stint. I wasn't really old enough to remember the first one. But yeah, no, this one's just completely personal bias. I want him in the game. I think he'd be fun to use, so fuck it, why not? At number 9, we have another guy who I have a lot of personal bias towards, and that's because he was one of the players I looked up to when I was a kid, and it's Mark Teixeira, another guy with a borderline Hall of Fame career, but not quite there yet. And I remember as a youngin', I loved him because he was Portuguese, and I'm like, shit, me too, bro. And that was pretty much it. But as a player, he was on a lot of teams, so you have good card variety potential. And although now it's coming out that a lot of people thought he was a dickhead, and low-key, I could kind of see it just by watching like the guy's mannerisms and shit. Like you kind of get that feel. He was still a really good player. I loved his swing, especially from the left-hand side. It looked like he would just take the ball and just golf. Fucking swing it out of the stadium. And as a Yankees fan, he was a great first baseman to watch for all those years, even towards the end when shit started to stink. He's another one of those 2000s guys I think should be in the game, and that's mainly because I just have a lot of love and nostalgia for that era of baseball. And finally, in at number 10, we have Pete Rose, which is another one that I think will probably never, ever happen. But if we're putting aside personal characteristics or personalities, I feel like Pete Rose has been banned for way too long, and just knowing him as a player, I don't really think he'd bet against himself or against his team. So while I agree he should have been punished in the first place for the whole gambling thing, I think we're past the point where anyone really cares, to be honest. I mean, the guy is easily one of the best hitters of all time, even though he did compile a lot of fucking hits. He played for a long time to get that record, but he's one of 3 people with 4,000 professional hits. That is ridiculous. He's a baseball icon, and I feel like just putting him to the side doesn't really accomplish anything, which is why I think he should be in the Hall of Fame, along with in this game. I mean, you really can't tell the story of baseball without Pete Rose. And if you want to make more people like the sport, you should tell it in its full grand detail, all the bumps in the road, everything like that, because it is one hell of a ride. And Pete Rose is an incredibly important part of that ride. Alright guys, that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. And let me know in the comments down below who are some legends you want to see appear for the first time in MLB The Show 21. As always, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe out there, and peace.